you're trying to be the message. Love isn't just for those that you like. Paul could have just kept his mouth shut, and another filthy Roman would have died, the enemy. He's like, no. Good morning. Hopefully everybody's doing well. I'm trying to hopefully condense a little bit this morning. I've got a few thoughts, and that's always dangerous, those that you know me. But sometimes the text is just amazing, and a lot of the songs this morning are just fitting right into this, but it's talking about being the message. So to start, let's go ahead and stand. And I want you to repeat this prayer of Paul after me. Pray also for me that whenever I speak, words may be given to me, that I may fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly, as I should. Let's say this together. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. But I don't want to stop it here. I want to go to the next verse. Let's say it together. Whatsoever you have learned, or received, or heard from me, or seen in me, put it into practice. Do you understand what Paul is saying? We love this verse. It's a lot harder for this one. You may be seated. Paul begins his ministry, Antioch of Syria. A lot is happening over here between Jerusalem and Antioch. That is the home of the early church, and it's beginning to spread. And we know the stories of Paul and Barnabas and John Mark heading out on their first missionary journey, and they head over to Paphos in Cyprus and head up to Perga and into Lystra, Iconium, Antioch, Derbe. Things are going well. They head back to Jerusalem. The council happens, and they're deciding, what do we do with these Gentiles? We got the Jewish law. Should we have them be circumcised? Are they allowed to eat pork? What are we going to do? It's a lot harder when you're having two diverse groups coming together. Imagine at your church fellowship meal if you have all vegetarians, and now we're bringing in meat eaters. What are we going to do? It's a serious topic. Ladies, it would be frustrating to know, this is Gentile aisle. It disrupts community behavior. And now Paul is heading back out on his missionary journey. We understand that him and Barnabas have had a following out just because Paul is I think he's an Enneagram 8. When they got to Perga, it was getting fall. It's probably 1 or 8. It's hard to know. He gets to Perga in the fall, and Barnabas and John Mark are going, if we head north, it's mountainous. The passes will close because it snows. And if that happens, we're not going to make it back to the feast in the fall in Jerusalem. John Mark, being a younger guy, probably late teens, early 20s, they're going, I want to go home. I don't want to spend my winters up here in the north in the mountains. And they have a disagreement. Now they're Paul's getting ready to go on his second missionary journey, and there's like, I can't take John Mark with me. We're too much of a disagreement. And now he chooses Silas. I love this. We see Paul and Silas. It rolls off our tongue. We know the stories all the time, but did you know that Silas is the Aramaic word for Saul? So Saul and Saul head off on this missionary journey together. One takes the Greek name, one takes the Aramaic name, so now it's Paul and Silas, but they're both Saul. But we're going to be teaching out of Acts chapter 16 today. because there's a lot in this stories that we know, but then we often overlook. They head out on their journeys, and their whole purpose is to admonish and encourage the churches that he established in his first missionary journey. And they're doing it, and they go all throughout the areas of Asia Minor, traveling in this area again. They're walking more this way direction now. They're going through Derbe and Lystra, Iconium, Antioch, Perg. We know the story. He wants to go north up into Lidia, but for some reason, God doesn't want him to go that way. And he heads to Troas. I find it interesting in verse number 10, Luke, the author of Acts, changes the language. At this point, he's all been talking about them, they got together, they were doing this, and now he's like, we. So now, for some reason, it seems like Paul and Silas and now Luke are on this journey together, and they head across the Aegean into Neapolis and head towards Philippi. We have to realize that Philippi is not your normal town. This is the center of one of the most well-known battles in history. Overlooking this beautiful valley in the Ganges River is this beautiful acropolis. The marshlands are to the south, the mountains are to the north, and this is the main area, the main road, the Via Egnatia that goes through, this main drag is the only trade route that's heading towards the east that connects to the trade routes, the spice routes, all of that. But if you would stand on this acropolis and look over, you would see a city that was almost in ruins. 100 years before Paul gets there, civil war had broke out in Rome. Somebody stabbed Caesar in the back, literally. Cassius and Brutus gather an army to go hunt down Cassius and Brutus go after Mark Antony and Octavian, who are in the lineage of Caesar and are trying to restore and try to keep this new house of Julius and this Julian name alive. And we see that we have Brutus and Cassius, those that killed Caesar, on one side, and you have this idea of where the old republic is fighting this new concept of the Julius house. The Republicans don't realize that the past is already gone. Rome had already switched over, and they're fighting for an old ideal. On the other side, with Octavian, they realize that the culture had already switched as well. But here in the plains, this battle happens. Just as the war is being won, Brutus and Cassius, instead of dying on the field, they commit suicide. That's more honorable to die. And finally, Rome now ushers in this no longer the republic. It is now the kingdom of Rome. Violent effect across the world, in the known world. A third of the senators are either killed or pushed out. It's a bloodbath. But now Octavian comes to power. We would know him as Caesar Augustus. And they set up this new kingdom. Caesar calls himself Lord and God, the Son of God. And this new gospel of Caesar takes forth, and Pax Romana is pushed out. But because of this, and Philippi being the center of that battle, the establishment of Rome, it becomes a colony of Rome. It is literally little Rome. All the laws, all the citizenship, all the benefits of Rome happens in Philippi. It is an official colony. If you are in Philippi, you should feel like you're in Rome. You would say, I am a Roman citizen, even though I live in Philippi. But just as important, about 100 years after that initial battle, I want you to imagine this road again, but instead you see a couple weary travelers walking towards Philippi. One, there was this massive battle between armies. Now you're going to see a massive conflict of ideals. What happens when a Jewish guy and his friends show up with this new kingdom, this new image bearer of Christ. How is it going to conflict with this? Paul shows up in this town and village, and when you read it, he comes to Philippi, and on the Sabbath he went out to the city by the riverside, where prayer was wont to be made. Now we see this and we go, okay, people are gathering by the river to pray. We got a whole song about it. We go down to the river to pray. But in the Greek, it mentions a word here, proseuche, which means a prayer house. It also is translated synagogue. So probably there's a small building that's being used where Jews would go to synagogue. They do it along the river because they need living water to do mikvah before they worship God. But Paul reaches out and is trying to find what's happening in this community, and there seems to be a Jewish community there, and he goes there. And what's interesting, it says that in that audience, a certain woman named Lidia, a seller of purple. So before Paul gets there, you have a woman from Lydia, a pagan city, one of in Central Asia Minor, selling of purple, which is a royal color, probably wealthy, is now attending. We don't know why she's there. She was so attracted to this Jewish community where they're trying to bring shalom that she wants to be there. It doesn't mention that she ever has a husband in the text. Is she looking at this Jewish community and realizing that they're protecting the women and the needy that are there and trying to keep her safe? We don't know what happens, but she's there. And she's worshiping God and she attended on things which were spoken of Paul. And when she was baptized, and her household. Immediately, Paul begins to declare, hey, you guys got to hear this. You're not going to believe this. There was this guy. And he tells them the story of the gospel. And she believes. Now, what does it mean to bring the kingdom? What should happen if the kingdom comes? If you judge me to be faithful to the Lord, come into my house and abide there. And she contained us. You can't go. Don't leave. No, please stay. No. Just like that. What happens when the kingdom comes? Immediately it changes to say, no, welcome into our community. Come join me in our house. Now, the story progresses. And another person is impacted as well. Paul is out here teaching, and a damsel comes and is declaring, these are servants of the Most High God. I have heard many topics on this. It always frustrated me. Isn't she saying the truth? These are servants of the Most High God. They are leading you to salvation. And Paul then throws a fit, I guess, and it's like, demon, be gone. And it bothered me. Why would he do that? If someone's saying these are servants of the Most High God, bringing you salvation, why would he shut somebody up that's doing that? What's very interesting in the diaspora, or in the spreading of Jewish people, they begin to mix Jewish faith and pagan ritual. They begin to combine gods, and instead of it just being what we would say the Most High God, they begin to look at Zeus as being the Most High God. There's many different theories on this. It's hard to nail one because there's a lot of ancient writings or ancient stones in temples that talk about this Most High God, but it's not God as we would know it. And Paul is getting frustrated because she's diluting what he's trying to say. And immediately we have two stories. We have Lydia that converts, and now with this woman now, demon is gone, and the kingdom is coming. Going back to this concept of Philippi, it's very unique in this story because Paul is writing in this narrative in Philippians, and he doesn't write this to any of the letters that he has. He's not writing to Galatia. He's not writing to Ephesus. He doesn't include it in any of others letters. But when he looks at Philippi, He says, remember, your citizenship is in heaven. You are acting as if you are in heaven where you are. Now, I don't know about you, but that is so hard for me to grasp that Paul is literally saying, you are treating your community as if you are living in heaven right now. Your actions, your relationships, everything that you're doing is the kingdom of heaven. People should walk in and go, oh, so this is what heaven will be like. And one of this concept of being the message, because being the message requires us to show people what the kingdom of heaven is like. The story continues. Right after he casts out the demons from this girl, they haul him before the magistrates. And this magistrate is in this concept of the Agora. The Agora is where the heart of the city is. Right next to it is the amphitheater where all the activities are happening. But this becomes the heart, and he is the governor. Think of it as a governor over this area. And one of his responsibilities is the activities that happen in the theater. What's interesting, this theater in Philippi was built by Alexander the Great's father, Philip, which actually the city was first named after. So it's an old theater, but when Rome came in, they changed it a little bit. They made it so that this was not just a place where drama and plays were done, but they turned it into a place where gladiator games could happen. And you can still see it today. There was a ledge around here where a fence would have been that could have kept the wild animals out. There's openings in the floor where they kept the animals below you, so you'd actually hear the lions or the hyenas or the wild dogs or whatever was being underneath there. There's trap doors and things like that to bring them out. And this was what Rome was doing. And there was usually 3 different concepts of games that the magistrate was responsible for. And the first one was typically just wild animals. Wild pack of dogs against some deer. Or 2 lions that fight it out to the death. Or whatever. It was animal battles. And typically that was the first games in the day. And then it would progress further to where you would have gladiator against animals. So a trained soldier fighting off whatever wild animal. But as the afternoon got on, it became more bloody. Then the gladiators would fight slaves or prisoners. And then the main battle now is gladiators against gladiators to the death. And Paul was using this idea in a lot of his teaching. It's hard for us to grasp this, but unfortunately, something had happened in Philippi that caused a problem. And in chapter 4, he writes, I beseech Euodias and I beseech Syntyche that be of the same mind in the Lord. And I entreat you, it says yoke fellow or true companion, help these women, since they have contended at my side in the cause of the gospel. It's interesting in these gladiatorial games, you would have these soldiers facing, so it'd be 3-on-3 or whatever the teams were, and they would face each other, and they would literally basically, you got my back, I got yours, you take the front, I got this side, you got that side. And it's a concept to where they contended together. And for some reason, imagine this in the theater, you're sitting in the theater and you see these gladiators out, and as the 3 are fighting, one of the guys accidentally steps on the ankle of the other gladiator and they start yelling at each other. Yes, there's other people getting ready to kill them, but they're yelling at each other, and then they start fighting each other. Imagine the crowd will go crazy and laugh at them. What are you doing? You're going to die. Now you're going to kill each other? And Paul says, help these women. Help them. They contended with me. They were literally fighting arm in arm with me. Don't you realize the crowd is laughing at us? We can't get along with each other. You're in a fight among yourself? The lions are coming. The gladiators are coming to kill you, and you're just going to fight it out yourself? And he says, this isn't the kingdom of heaven. This distorts what this idea is. How can we show the world what the kingdom of heaven is like if we can't even get along? And the crowds laugh at us. How attractive is Christianity today? How much of the world laughs at us because we can't get along? So many times you have sin creeping in and the leaders fall and the world laughs. And Paul doesn't say kick them out, help them. Don't you understand? Their names are in the book of life. They need to get along because then the kingdom of heaven can come. But this magistrate also is responsible then for everything that happens in the Agora. And Paul, after casting out the demons from this girl, is dragged before the magistrates. What's interesting here, at their side is typically two lictors, and they are responsible for justice or making sure that anybody that did something wrong, it was handled immediately. If the magistrate saw something, he could instantly say, nope, this is what's going to happen. Here's your punishment. And you can see it, they're carrying a long bundle of rods, about 1.5 inches, think of a dowel rod or bigger than a broomstick. And that was their method of punishment. And because Paul and Silas, they cast this demon out of this girl, they drag him before the magistrates, and he says, strip them of their clothes and beat them. And Paul and Silas are basically beaten almost to death. Paul doesn't say he's a Roman citizen. All he would have to say, here's my Roman citizen card. They can't touch him. He doesn't do it. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't he say, I want my lawyer? I plead the fifth. Read me my rights. I get a phone call. He doesn't. Then it says they grab them and throw them into the inner cell. There's 3 levels of cells, prisons. The first one is kind of like a holding area. Prisons aren't a place of sentence. It's like you get 6 years in prison. It's not you're sentenced to prison. It is a holding place for further judgment to happen. They don't feed you in prison. They don't take care of you in prison. If you don't have friends, you're done. But the outer one is probably where more to the Roman citizen side of it was you're in a holding place until you can go off to Rome. It's a better place. Paul is there in Caesarea when he does declare that he's a Roman citizen. He's under house arrest almost. The second one is where now you're getting into the violent crimes and things like that, but the inner one is a dungeon. It's a hole in the ground. You don't come back up. They don't feed you. They don't give you water. You're there to die. It also says that they put their legs in stocks. I couldn't find a picture, or I couldn't even find any archaeological design of this, but this isn't quite accurate. They spread your legs as far apart as possible till your hips are popping out of joint. So Paul and Silas are now beaten to a pulp in excruciating pain in prison. Now, to remind you, Paul is a Jew. He has something that has been drilled into him from a young child, and it's the text. Now, all of the time growing up, and I've heard this story, and you all have too, hundreds of times, I was taught that Paul and Silas, sitting in their prayers, smile on their face, hearts full of joy, happy as a lark. Paul looks over at Silas and says, man, I feel like singing. My heart is overjoyed. Hey, Silas, you got any songs you want to sing? I don't know. Whips out his praise and worship, turns to page 5. How great thou art. Or no, Paul's like, no, 333. Wonderful grace of Jesus. I I see them in excruciating pain. Paul turned to Silas. Hey, you okay? I don't know, man. You think we're going to make it? I'm not sure. You have any idea what time it is? I don't know, Paul. About midnight. Paul goes silent. And something comes back to him. By day, the Lord directs his love. At night, his song is within me. You are my portion, Lord. I have promised to obey your words. I have sought your face with all my heart. Be gracious to me according to your promises. I've considered my ways. I've turned my steps to your statutes. I will hasten and not delay to obey your commands. Though the wicked bind me with ropes, I will not forget your law. And at midnight, I will rise to give you thanks for your righteous laws. And Paul begins to quote the Psalms. To be the message, we've got to live the text. It's not where they're just overfilled with joy, let's sing, hoorah. No. Paul's realizing the text says that at midnight, and everything in him begins to sing the Psalms of David and gives thanks. In the text, there's a couple words that always should jump out to you, and one of it is suddenly. Anytime that word shows up, God is about ready to do something amazing. Suddenly, an earthquake happens, and it says all the cell doors blew open. Now, you're out of your stocks, your chains are gone, your door blows open, what you're going to do next? Guys, guess what? We're out of here. It's so loud, the earthquake, it must have just shook the cell. I don't know what happened. The guard wakes up, the guy that's over top of the jail, and typically it's an ex-soldier that has been a veteran, that they take this job and they own it. It's everything to them. And it is their life. If anything goes wrong, they are dead. If a prisoner escapes, if they're seen to be merciful or Rome doesn't like it, their life's on the line. And he wakes up and realizes that all the doors to the prison is open. And he is terrified. He whips out his knife and is about ready to commit suicide. Now, we look at this and go, yeah, he's so scared because the Rome's going to come in and kill him, so he's just going to do it now. I don't see it that way. He realizes, just due to Roman law, that if he does the honorable thing and kills himself, his family gets to keep everything. I think he's trying to protect his family. And Paul's like, no, don't do that. We're all here. I can understand Paul being there, realizing what's going on. Maybe even Silas, he's halfway out the door, going, oh yeah. But the other prisoners? What in the world is going on? What is making them stop and go, wait a minute here, this isn't normal? Do you realize when you are being the message, in preferring others, it's attractive? Are you telling me that these guys in the inner cells, the ones that are going to be dead in a few days, are willing to stay here and stop and say, no, don't kill yourself. He just put you in stocks. When you're trying to be the message, love isn't just for those that you like. Paul could have just kept his mouth shut and another filthy Roman would have died. The enemy. He's like, no, that's not the kingdom of heaven. That's not how this is. The guard calls for a light and came in trembling and fell down before Paul and Silas and brought them out and said, guys, what must I do to be saved? Now immediately we jump to the theological. This guy is ready to accept Christ. He must have a master's in theology to be able to understand that. This is a Roman. He has no clue about how to be saved or even who Christ is. All he knows is these guys are just doing something, singing in here. I'm not sure what happened. Earthquake. Help me. My family's going to die. If Rome shows up tomorrow and the prisoners are gone, I'm dead. Save me. How do I deal with this? Paul begins to look at him. Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved, and thy house. And they spake unto him the words of the Lord, and to all that were in his house. What happens when a prison guard meets the kingdom of heaven? What happened to Lydia? What'd she do? Come in, stay. You can't go. Come to my house. Let me feed you. Let me take care of you. What do you think the prison guard did? He took them the same hour of the night, washed their stripes, and he brought them into his house, set meat before them, and rejoiced, believing in God with all his house. The kingdom of God changes people. When they realize what this actually is, what heaven really feels like, immediately their arms open up and go, wow, come in. And the household was saved. Now, the keeper of the prison told this, saying to Paul, the magistrates now have sent to let you go. Now you can go, depart, go in peace. And Paul said, wait a minute here. I love this part. They have beaten us openly, uncondemned, being Romans. He could have saved himself the beatings. He could have saved himself the prison. He could have saved himself the stocks if he would have just said, oh, by the way, I'm Roman. Now, he's being set free, and he's like, nope, I'm Roman. What in the world is happening? Why would he do this? All right, they cast us into prisons. Now they want us to throw us out privately? No, let them come themselves and fetch us out. And the servants told these words unto the magistrates, and they feared when they had heard that they were Roman. What is Paul doing? He realizes that as soon as he leaves, these magistrates are going to be angry. And who's going to bear the brunt of their anger? This church, this guard. He's like, no. Once again, the kingdom of heaven is looking out for other people. And now this church has protection. We see it where the kingdom of being the message and the kingdom of heaven, it comes with a price. We see that it causes innocent prisoners to stand up and protect the prison guard. We see Paul taking a beating, but the message continues because he is the kingdom of heaven. And then they came and besought them and brought them out and desired them to depart out of the city. And they went out into the prison, and guess where they went? To the house of Lydia. And guess who was all there? All of the brethren. Because Lydia says, no, come on in. It's hard to bring the kingdom of heaven. It's hard to be the message. So often we say the right things. We believe the right things. But the message that we are living is so different. It's so contradictory to it. But here is Paul showing up. 3 guys walking on a road, step into town, and the town changes completely. Why? They're being the message of the kingdom. He writes in this and says, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have not love, I am a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. Though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I can move mountains and have not love, I am nothing. And though I give all my goods to the poor, and though I give my body to be burned and have not love, it profiteth me nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. And where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness or perfection comes, what in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought as a child. I reasoned like a child. But when we became adults, mature, we put away childish things. For now we just see a reflection as a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now we know in part, but then we're going to know fully, even as I'm fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Let's stand. Father God, help us to live your message. Help us to live Paul's prayer. Pray also for me that whenever I speak, words may be given, that I may fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel.